This is the grossest illustration I've ever made. I am illustrating the second Harry Potter book. If you've read it or seen the movies, you know this scene already. I am in chapter 7, and this is the scene where Ron tries to put a curse on Malfoy, but it backfires, literally. It ends up hitting Ron since his wand is broken from the car crash, so he ends up throwing up slugs. I went with the aftermath of the scene, when Ron, Harry and Hermione are at Hagrid's hut, so Ron has a bucket to throw the slugs into. And I'm only focusing on Ron for this illustration. I just wanted to focus on the disgustingness of the action. Also, this video is sponsored by me. Check out my art shop, link in the description. I made the drawing on mixed media paper using pencils. And I am painting it with my egg tempera paints from the brand Sennelier. Since I want to focus on one character and the action, I am doing a vignette look. I'll just paint him and leave the background in white. I like when parts of the background show through the main illustration. I didn't do an underpainting for this one, like I did in the previous Harry Potter illustration I had done. So I just used the local colors of the objects. And I'm adding the paint in washes. I don't know why I didn't do an underpainting. I think usually the ones where I add a main color for the underpainting tend to look nicer or more cohesive in the end. Maybe because it's basically just a portrait, I felt like I could get it to work with just going straight into the local colors of the piece. In the initial drawing, I had added the Gryffindor logo on his wizard robe on the shoulder. I ended up removing it, since in the last illustration, I think I only put the crest on his chest. I am trying to keep the uniforms cohesive. I would have loved to include the wizard hat on his head, but not exactly on top. Since this is a forward action, I was thinking his hat could be falling behind and that would help convey the forward movement of the character. But it didn't really fit in this format, so I didn't include it. If it was digital, I would add it, since it's so easy to change canvas sizes. Here I am bound to the size of the paper. I could have drawn him differently, like smaller to try and fit the hat, but I really wanted to focus on his face and his expression. If I drew him smaller, it would be harder to do that. I also tried initially to make him look pale, sickly pale. I planned to use grays on his skin to achieve this look, but first I tried to build that color of skin slowly. For the slugs, I drew them like curled up or curving. It helps make them look like they are falling and trying to grab onto whatever. They are just gross. I went with some muted pinks and greys for them. I added variation on the colors to keep them interesting. If they were all the exact same color, it's a bit boring. I'm also painting them slowly, just adding the main color first, and later on I will work more on the details for them. It's just nicer for me to work on all elements of the piece slowly to make sure all is working with each other. So as I was saying for the sickly skin color, I wanted him to look very sick, so I thought to use grays on his skin tone. I've done it before in previous paintings and I think it works really well to convey that message. But as I was painting him with the grays, he seemed so exaggerated. He was also looking a bit older than I wanted, so I did struggle getting to paint that skin tone. I think in the end I ended up repainting the color so much, it just didn't come out too well. I had to remove a lot of the grays that I wanted to put in. And since I included the hands, I had to match the colors there as well. I used the same red for the hair as for the Gryffindor uniform. I should have added some orange on his hair though. I think it looks better when I add oranges to red hair, because I think it looks more natural when red hair has a more orange tone instead of full dark red. But anyway, I just used mostly red for this one. The way I draw Ron's hair is in a bowl cut. I think that's the name of that hairstyle. Like that kind of Beatles hairstyle. I think it's nerdy and cute. Since this particular illustration is all about the movement of the character while doing this action, I had to draw his hair in a messy way. I tried to still show that it was a bowl haircut. I made most of the strands end up in that straight shape, and I added some regular strands flowing around them to indicate the messiness. I hope it's making sense. I'm not entirely sure how to explain it better. You can see here I was struggling a lot with his skin tone. I tried introducing a more grey tone again to depict sickness, but no, it wasn't coming out well. Also, with such bright red hair, the grey in the skin tone really clashed, so I reintroduced some pinks on the skin. He doesn't look as sick as I would have wanted, but the illustration definitely looks better than how it was coming across before. So in the end, it's all good. I also ended up painting the highlight. I was planning on leaving it as the color of the paper on his neck and his nose, but I preferred to blend the skin tones in those places to try and make the skin look nicer. At this point, I moved on to detailing the slugs. They were mostly shapes before, now I work to add more color. I added some dots of color to give them texture. I looked up slug photos and a lot of them had those darker dots on their bodies, so I included them. And I also I guess it's their eyes or their antennas, I'm not sure. I don't want to look at them too closely. The last thing I did was add definition using color pencils. I didn't record it, but I added his freckles last, and I did them using the tempera paint. That way I could create variations in the values, and it makes for a natural freckles look. Here is the finished illustration. It's still disgusting, in my opinion. Poor Ron. I think I should have done some other darker lines on the expression, like the eyes for example. And I think I really messed up the perspective on the bucket. I was so focused on everything else that I overlooked it. Something to think about for next time.